Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Amazing Race Rewind podcast, a podcast where we rewind back in time to watch the earliest seasons of The Amazing Race for the first time. My name is Andrew.
And I'm Jill.
And we are here today to talk about Season 2, Episode 8, Part 2, aka Leg 9.
Yes, honestly, coming off of the last leg, this one was just as strong, I think. It was fun.
I think it was just as strong. I think the legs were equally as challenging, if not more challenging. It was still very competitive, and it just, the flow of this episode, it was an hour and a half long altogether, but I think it flowed very nicely, and I think these were probably the two strongest episodes of the season so far.
They were, and I know last week you added that what was nice to finally see is teams struggling with a task, and we saw that again here, and it's really kind of bringing in that more modern side of the Amazing Race that we've been missing, is finally we have tasks where teams are challenged. It's not a straightforward get there, do it, leave. They have to spend time, and it takes work.
Yeah, which is what I love. We get to see this little evolution of the show and like the introduction of these tasks. I don't know, so they both like the needle in a haystack task is introduced here in this episode.
Yep.
And yeah, and we'll get right into it unless you have anything else to add.
I don't know. I think the content is all in the episode itself, so let's just go for it.
Okay. So, Oswald and Danny are the first team to depart, and they are currently in Sydney at 8:55 p.m. And they open the clue, and they are instructed to climb to the top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. They have to climb about 200 stairs.
It's kind of neat that it's just is not related to the race, but that the bridge itself is built at such a parabola, if you will. Is that a parabola?
Yeah, but it's like a very mild parabola, I suppose.
Yeah, but that you can just take steps up it. I like that. It's not like
it's like an arch.
It's not like you're rappelling up a bridge. It's just very easy to go up.
How would you rappel up a bridge?
Well, like, no. You know what I mean?
That'd be crazy.
Like
I don't know what you mean.
It's like you're in the gear and you climb up and then you rappel down. Like you're like climbing up a bridge. You know what I mean?
Okay, I know what you mean. It's just the rappel was throwing me off there.
I know. I contradicted myself, but
I was just like imagining somebody like boinging and like making their way up a bridge somehow, you know?
We're off to a great start.
But nevertheless, the bridge does not open until 5:45 a.m. and all the teams start out in the evening, so they have to figure out what they're going to do to stay the night.
They're basically creating a muster point right off the bat, which I don't know if I like.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much you could do at 8:55, like at that late at night.
That's true.
I guess, I don't know if it was like completely intentional or if that's just the way like the hours of operation worked, because they can't really predict what time teams are going to arrive in what countries and like how long they're going to take for everything.
I guess that's it.
But Oswald and Danny, the first team to depart, they have a little quote here when they're talking about how they've now decided after Bangkok that, you know, they're just going to add an element of competitiveness on top of just having a good time. And to that I say, look, what a concept when you're racing for $1 million to try and be a little competitive. And I was like, was last leg, was that them being competitive last leg?
And to bring it in this early in the race too, or to bring in that mindset this late. Why am I using the wrong word for everything? To bring it in this late in the race is crazy.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's like one of the things where it's like, oh, we actually like might have a shot to win, so we might as well try and take it a little bit more seriously. But they said after Bangkok they decided to be competitive, but last I recall, last episode when they were for going from Hong Kong to Australia, their idea of being competitive is to take a leisurely
shopping trip
down. Yeah, that doesn't seem very competitive, but I guess to them that was the definition of competitive.
Yeah, to each their own. Everyone has their own definition of competitive. Not mine, not most of the teams, but...
So while Oswald and Danny are off being competitive, Chris and Alex are departing 15 minutes afterward at 9:10 p.m. and they decide they're going to take the fast forward, which is at Harry's Cafe, and they have to eat his, quote, famous meat pie from the cafe.
Although I love it as a task, because I would just love to have like a meat pie, like go somewhere and you'd be served food.
Yeah, get some good protein.
What a ridiculous fast forward. Like, come on. Eat a meat pie? Like, come on.
Well, at least they made them like actually eat something, as opposed to season 1, episode 2, when they were in Paris And yeah, when they were in Paris, and Kevin and Drew just literally went to a tea shop. They didn't even have to drink tea, did they?
I don't think they did. No, that's true.
Yeah.
But I'm like, just go to this guy's, meat stand or whatever to like, and make all the teams eat a pie. Like, it seems unfair that just the teams who get the fast forward get to eat the meat pie.
Well, I guess arguably any team could have gone and eaten the meat pie if they really wanted to, because they paid for it.
But what, like, I would be mad. Like, if I was sitting there, and even if I got first place and the team of the fast forward got second, I would be sitting there going, excuse me, you got a meat pie and I didn't?
Some extra protein, a little boost. They should have made them have to make a meat pie. Now that would have been something.
There we go.
That would have been something.
Then I wouldn't, see, I just want to eat the meat pie, so I think that was a horribly unfair task, but whatever.
Okay. And there's a little bit of drama, so to speak, with the fast forward, where Blake and Paige, they decide to also go for the fast forward, even though that Chris told Paige that they were going to go for it. But here's the thing. Paige thought that Chris was lying to Blake and Paige to deter them from going to the fast forward, but she actually thought that Chris and Alex weren't going for the fast forward, so they were just tricking them. So she had some like 4D thinking going on, and they said, you know what, that's not gonna work on us. We're gonna go for it anyway. And I think Paige was giving Chris and Alex way too much credit. There's no way they would have thought of doing something like that, you know?
I agree. I also have to point out how the way you phrased it, you said Chris and Alex were trying to trick Blake and Paige, and you said Paige thought Blake and Paige, as if Blake and Paige are a corporation or an entity.
Well,
rather than saying Paige thought they were trying to trick her, Paige thought they were trying to trick Blake and Paige.
Well, they are an entity. They're all mishmashed into one, really.
They're
not individual people.
That's true. But I agree. I agree with your point of that for that team specifically. Like, let's say if this was the Guidos from last season,
yeah,
I would believe that they would maybe be concocting
That's something they would do. Yeah.
But Chris and Alex,
there's no way they would be that strategic.
No.
So Blake and Paige go for the fast forward anyway. But then when they arrive, Chris and Alex have already eaten the meat pie, and they go on their way and have to figure out a place to sleep for the night.
And they're left on empty stomachs.
They don't even get a meat pie. Although they still could have bought one, but Paige did make a comment. Paige made a comment that she said they looked kind of gross, so she was glad she didn't have to eat one.
They looked great.
Yeah, don't be so hard on Harry. And another thing to note with the bridge task is it's a sign-up board. So only one team can go at a time. And Oswald and Danny are the first ones to the sign-up board here. And then Gary and Dave are the second ones to sign up after that. Tara and Will are the third. And Blake and Paige are the last ones to sign up because they went for the fast forward.
Yes. Like you mentioned, teams kind of, when they open their initial clues, they sign up. But it's kind of a dry spot after this because they all just kind of, maybe that's kind of funny because it does rain, but most of the teams end up sleeping outside overnight to wait for the bridge to open, except for Danny and Oswald.
Yeah, Danny and Oswald decide they're going to go to a hotel and they're going to pretend like they stayed the night at the hotel and ask the people working there to hold their bags for them while they wait for the driver, and then they just end up sleeping in the lobby all night. Which, you know what, you gotta do what you gotta do.
They seem like they rely on hotels, but honestly, pretty forward thinking.
It was smart. They didn't have to spend money, but I do have written down here that Tara and Will did actually get a hotel here.
Oh.
And then another thing that happened during this little beat was Gary and Dave, they decide they have time to kill, so why don't we go around and beg some people for money? For little reason.
No comment.
Yeah, I mean, I respect the hustle, I suppose, but I would feel so guilty asking these people for money when I don't need it. Like, it was one thing when Blake and Paige did it, when they literally lost all of their money and they needed it to, like, get on the next piece of transportation. But Gary and Dave going around asking these people for money when I think they don't need it, and they say they end up getting $51. It's like, what are they just going to pocket that at the end, or what?
Yeah, again, no comment. Like, there's no comment I can make to that. Other than it's not something you and I would do.
No. But this also kind of feels like something that was maybe a little bit played up for the cameras, you know?
I think they're really trying. The more I watch them, the more I think they're really trying to play for the cameras. Which, I mean, respect. Get the airtime.
Get the airtime. Which, I mean, I don't think we had one of those at a team like that in season 1. Like, I think it was all pretty raw and real.
I think season 1, though, it's just nobody really knew.
Yeah.
Like, no one really knew what was going on.
That's true. Yeah. And then Chris and Alex are on their way to the pit stop. They're booking flights to Adelaide, I think.
They have to go to Adelaide first, yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, they have to make their way to an Aboriginal camp, which is in the Australian outback. And they're talking about, in their Boston accents, forgive me, how wicked smart they are. Because they're from Boston and they're wicked smart. That's pretty good, eh?
Yeah, that wasn't bad, actually. Better than your Kevin and Drew, almost. What was the Kevin and Drew one again?
Oh, my God.
Something about stepped on a tire.
Oh, yeah, because he's from the Bronx.
Anyway.
So we cut to the next morning, and, we have, like, a little montage of it raining outside, and Blake and Paige out in the rain, and they move to, like, some random building and sleep in this
Blake and
random
Paige...
building.
Is it them that they look like they're on the steps of the Sydney Opera House? Like, it looks like they're sleeping in the most open, inconvenient place to sleep.
I did not notice that, no.
They're on, like, some wide whatever.
So we cut to the morning, the rain has stopped, I think, and the music is very dark and intense and very cinematic. And we go to Oswald and Danny, who are the first ones to do this bridge task. And there's this really cool shot of them just where it's like the sun is just barely coming up. There's like a little bit of light, and it's their silhouettes walking toward the bridge with the Sydney Opera House in the back. It's very dramatic.
The cinematographers are working for their money this year.
They really were, yeah. So yeah, everybody does the bridge task. I mean, it's cool, but there's really not much to discuss with that one.
No, they're like led up the bridge by an employee, whatever. It's pretty straightforward.
And it's not like anything super scary. They're just like walking upstairs, grab their clue, and leave. And then from there, teams have to make their way to Coober Pedy and find the metal tree. And then they also fly through Adelaide.
Yeah, so there's not much that happens in between Sydney and Adelaide, but when they're waiting for because there's 3 chartered flights out of Adelaide into the outback, right? So this is kind of where a lot of stuff goes down.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a sign-up board for the charter flights to the outback. And everybody's on the same flight to Adelaide, and once they get there, there's just a mad dash to the terminal. And I just want to point out here that Blake and Paige, their first instinct is to go to Emu Airways, which I think is an excellent name for an airline company. I really appreciated that.
I love a silly airline name. Like, honestly, I don't think we stop and think enough about the fact that we have an airline called Swoop. Like, who would trust getting on that plane?
Well, with the name Swoop, yeah, you're going to swoop down.
Didn't they go bankrupt or something?
I think they did.
Anyway, that was completely irrelevant.
Yes, at this point, teams they catch up to Chris and Alex. We're also at the Adelaide airport, and Chris and Alex are on the first flight out. Blake and Paige and Tara and Will, I believe, are both on the same flight. And then Gary and Dave are 15 minutes behind Blake and Paige and Tara and Will. And
this causes a bit of not tension, what's the word I'm looking for? Gary and Dave are not happy.
They're not happy about this at all. No. I don't know how they fell behind, but they did.
And already in my notes at this point, I have Gary and Dave boot, ?
Oh, one can dream.
One can hope.
And then also I just want to point out here at the airport, Chris and Alex, they're like trying to flirt with the lady at the visitor center. And it's like, to me, it was pure crickets because it was so awkward. And she was just like trying to do her job. Meanwhile, they're like hitting on her and she's just like, Like, what an awkward situation. You've got TV cameras on you. These 2 Americans are coming in here on their, like, prepaid chartered flight. And it's just, like, how do you react? Yeah, and if you're, like, an introvert who doesn't want to interact with the camera, and all of a sudden this is happening to you, justice for her. So they arrive in the outback, and they're emphasizing how hot it is. I think it was 54 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's brutal. Like, even, like, our summers back home, like, 40 on a very hot day.
Wow.
There were some I'm saying, like, days when it was really hot, like, that's what it got up to for us.
Okay.
So it's like, I can't imagine what 54 Celsius would feel like.
Yes. And Chris and Alex are headed to the pit stop. Meanwhile, the others are driving themselves to Coober Pedy, where they get to the detour, which is between cool down and heat up.
I liked these, honestly. Finally, dare we say it, a good detour.
A great detour at that.
Actually, Is this the first time in Amazing Race Rewind history that we've liked a detour completely? wait.
Maybe applause for all.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. I feel like there have been a couple that were okay, but this is...
But the thing in the past is usually we've only liked one of the options. It's like, yeah, it was half good.
We liked the one last episode, the dragon boat or the lion.
Right.
This is the best one, though.
This is the
Hands
best.
down.
Season 2, episode 8, part 2, we're finally here. We finally made it. Who would have thought this day would come?
We finally made it to a great detour. Cool down and heat up.
Yeah.
So the thing is with this one is that you can either cool down, which is going down into a mine, and you have to dig for an opal. Now, this is kind of, like I mentioned before, like a needle in the haystack detour. It's very tedious and time consuming, and you're not really ever making any progress.
We should say that it's
just
not
kind
like
of digging aimlessly.
They're not making them actually mine. There's like a pile of pre-mined like rock and stuff in the tunnel, so they have to find that pile, but then once they get there they just have the sifters kind of, and they just dig into the pile and sift through, so not making them actually like pick at the walls with them. However
and these opals are very small, and I don't think they tell them what they look like, so teams are like, they keep on thinking they find one, but they don't really know what they're looking for, which just like adds to the
it's quite an ordeal, because like
complexity.
We said, they go down, they have to find the pile first amongst these tunnels, and then if they think they found one, they have to go back up to the mid-ground, and there's just this guy who's very silent, who's sitting on like this old truck, and they'll just hand it to him, and he'll just look at it and shake his head or nod. And every time he, like, what was the one team? They're like, come on, that's an opal. Like, what is that? And
they were like, I think it was Taryn Will. They were trying to like gaslight him into thinking that it wasn't an opal. And he's like, I do this for a living, guys. I think I know if it's an opal or not.
To one team, he literally just looked at them and said, that's a rock.
Yeah. He killed me. He was great. I think this was also the first like task judge that we've had.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, because in the past, dude, that's kind of a tension point they use for editing now. Editing, because it'll always be like the music, you know, that like Amazing Race music build-up, like the when the judge is evaluating something, and then he'll either shake his head or nod his head.
Yeah, it's like, are they gonna get it? Are they gonna get it?
We don't know.
And it starts here. Wow, a lot.
But anyway,
going on here.
We should explain the golf task.
So in the golf task,
which is heat up.
It's heat up. They have to play three holes in the driest golf course on earth. They claim to be.
And it's also a very confusing one too, because I guess it's not like, if you're teeing off at a certain point, you might think that a certain hole belongs to a certain starting point, but it doesn't, which trips up at a couple teams.
Yeah, it's like this golf course is horribly designed. PSA to anybody going to the Australian outback: do you want to play golf? Don't go to this golf course, because like it seems so unintuitive of like which teeing areas live to the corresponding holes. So yeah, my initial thought was that I would want to do the golf task because, like I said, the mine is much more luck based and there's no progress ever being made.
Yes. So we should add now to that Oswald and Danny, Tara and Will, and Gary and Dave all initially go for the mine, and Blake and Paige initially go for the golf course, but then Gary and Dave actually switch halfway through and end up at the golf course.
Yes, yeah. And Blake and Paige do the golf because of their dad, because he golfs, which this was a great decision for them because it proved to be much easier than the mining task.
I think for them specifically, though, because they also seem to be pretty decent golfers, so they could get the ball where they needed it to go, because Gary and Dave showed up after there and just don't golf.
So yeah, the teams get going with the detours. Oswald and Danny, they're having troubles trying to find where the shovels are. They're like falling at the first hurdle here. And then we have, I have this quote here after Tara and Will, when they were like trying to gaslight the judge into thinking that they found an opal when it was just a rock. Will goes, why did we do this, Tara? I'm not a miner. And then Tara goes, I know, you're an idiot.
Which is also, I think, the episode title.
It is, yeah, which is a great title.
No, I loved it. I want to add, though, I feel like you and I know you golf, I don't, but I personally think we should go for the mining task. What's your take?
I say golf.
But I firmly stand with us doing the mining task.
Okay, I don't like the mining task at all. Because it's so, like, wishy-washy. You have no idea if you're making any progress. Whereas with the golf, at least every time you hit the ball, you're getting closer to the hole, you know?
But I mini golf. I don't golf.
Well, you don't even have to be, like, a great golfer. You just have to hit the ball. Like, it doesn't matter how many shots it takes for you.
I see your point, I guess. I don't know. I think I also just like the idea of the mining one because it's cooler. Physically cooler, not like...
It'll get a little break from the heat. But yeah, Gary and Dave start the mining task, and like you said, they just sort of start digging into the walls. They're just hacking at the side of these cave walls.
There's like a good couple seconds of both of them just hacking at the walls of this tunnel, and I'm like, what do you think? Like, what do you think you're doing? Like,
I don't know.
Oh, and as we mentioned, they end up switching to the golf task.
They do. But Blake and Paige, they're having some issues with the golfing because it seems to be pretty difficult to find the correct hold, and they're dehydrated and they're hot and they're having a hard time. But they do complete the detour first here, and they're the first ones out of there.
But we should add, though, at this point as well, obviously Chris and Alex got the fast forward. So while these 4 teams are working on the detour tasks, Chris and Alex make it to the pit stop. Obviously, they're first. And again, they're provided with a vacation. Why have we started giving vacations at this point?
Yeah, they got to go to Cancun, courtesy of American Airlines.
Good for them.
I was like, I have no idea why we're throwing this in here, but we're doing it. Gary and Dave are the first ones to complete the mine task. So they're out of there.
Not Gary and Dave. Gary and Dave go to the golf.
No, I meant Oswald and Danny were the first ones to finish the mine task. Go. Yeah, Gary and Dave, they decide to switch midway through, which I think is a really tough decision, because the thing is with the mining task is you could keep going for 5 more minutes, and then like within that 5 minutes you could find the opal, or you could spend like another 2 hours there.
Yeah, it's so hit or miss, and I get what you mean. Like, it's so not based on skill.
Yeah, and I think with the golf course one, it'll take like a set amount of time. The mining one's a lot more risky.
Yes.
But yeah, they do ultimately switch midway through, which turns out to be not a great decision, because Tara and Will find their opal shortly after, and yeah, everyone's out of the detour. Meanwhile, Gary and Dave are on their way to the golf course.
But in the meantime, Danny and Oswald, Blake and Paige, and Tara and Will head to the roadblock.
Yes, which is at a lookout, and I don't have what the prompt was for it.
No, I don't remember the exact wording of the prompt.
Wait, let me try and pull it up.
For someone throwing should have a good arm.
Is that like correct grammar? For someone throwing should have a good arm? That just sounds like a bunch of words shoved together.
PSA, we're getting this off the Amazing Race Wikia page, so we could be wrong.
For someone throwing should have a good arm. Okay.
I feel like there's a word missing there. You get the gist of it. It's a boomerang task.
Which is very cool. It's like it's very fun cultural task for Australia. And the task is they have to stand in a circle, a large circle, and they have to throw a boomerang and then have the boomerang come back into the circle that they're standing in. And the thing is, if other teams show up, they have to take turns and go one at a time. And I really like this because that makes for good competition, and it's not like overly easy. It's not just like someone throws it once. There's technique involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really liked it.
Do you think I would do it or you would do it? Because I feel like we would be kind of equally... Like, because it's not about, like, how far can you throw it or how, like, fast. Mm-hmm. It's technique. So I feel like either of us, considering... Have you ever thrown a boomerang? I've never thrown a boomerang.
No. Actually, I think I have, like, when I was really young, but I don't recall anything about it.
That doesn't count.
So I don't know. I think, yeah, it's a toss-up because it is very technical. And I mean... Tara, when she does this, she just, like, stands at the back of the circle, and it seems like the boomerang barely leaves the circle. Like, from what we're shown, it doesn't look like it leaves the circle at all, but she gets the clue regardless from that.
You know, my note here was, theoretically, I would love to boomerang, but I don't think I'd be great at it. Yeah, no.
But it's also, I love a task when there's pressure to do well, because, like, if your partner, if you're not completing this roadblock, then the person next to you has the opportunity to pass you if they can do it, you know?
That's true. But yeah, and I have to add here, too, like, Blake and Paige have quite the turnaround this episode. Mm-hmm. And do they leave the boomerang task first?
Yes, Paige is doing it, and she is the first to complete it. And I just have a note here where somebody has a quote. They say, if Itchy and Scratchy come here, we're going to kill you all. And
we should also... I think we also need to address the
Side
Itchy and Scratchy
note about
thing.
Itchy and Scratchy. I feel like a moron.
I should add, okay, when we first addressed that a couple episodes ago, I remember thinking to myself, that definitely sounds like a reference to something, but I did not have the energy to go and Google it at that moment. And we got an email from a fan, from a listener, who is also my father, who sent us a link to a TV show called The Itchy and Scratchy Show.
Yeah.
So we've addressed that. And we're apologies if anybody was really mad at us for not understanding the reference.
Yeah, well, because it's a Simpsons reference, because, like, Itchy and Scratchy is a show within The Simpsons, but clearly we're not cultured enough to know that.
I never watched The Simpsons.
Yeah, I was never allowed to watch The Simpsons when I was younger.
Oh, it wasn't I was allowed. It just didn't even look interesting to me.
Yeah, I thought Mary and Peach just came up with that, and I was like, wow, that was pretty good.
I know, we addressed it like it was so creative.
Yeah, I know,
I'm just
right?
reading the wiki page for it here. It says, the cartoon depicts a blue mouse named Itchy who repeatedly maims or kills a black cat named Scratchy. So it's kind of like a...
Tom and Jerry?
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, so yeah, everybody, all the three teams, Blake and Paige, Tara and Will, and Oswald and Danny are all doing the roadblock. Meanwhile, Gary and Dave are still back at the detour as they're doing the golf. So like we said, Paige is the first one to complete it. They're really making a comeback, and they check in at the pit stop in second.
Yes.
Which is a great turnaround for them after them coming in last episode.
I know. And okay, at this point too, I have to add, because it keeps cutting back to Gary and Dave on the golf course, and there's music playing, and it sounds like, I think, on Mario Kart, is it Desert Ruins that is the course?
Oh my God.
It just sounds exactly like one of the desert tracks from Mario Kart. And it just killed me. I have to get the name of it.
I did not notice that.
Dry Ruins. Dry Ruins. I'm pretty sure it's that one. It sounds exactly like that music from the course.
Okay, just like stereotypically
like that.
Okay. I didn't notice that, but I'm glad you were able to appreciate it.
I'm always here for the music.
So yeah, Tara and Will, Tara finishes the roadblock after Paige, and then they end up coming in third. And Oswald and Danny, they're still at the roadblock as Gary and Dave arrive, and they complete the roadblock as Gary and Dave arrive, and Oswald and Danny ultimately come in fourth.
Now, Andrew, I have to ask, how do you feel about this elimination? Because, spoiler alert, I'll let you say it. I think you deserve to say it.
The day has come, and I am able to say that Gary and Dave are indeed not the winners of The Amazing Race Season 2, and I do not have to resign from this podcast. It can live on. The Amazing Race Rewind lives on.
I think we have a bad omen with having guests on, because we ask them, who do you think will win? And then their team gets eliminated like the next episode or the one after.
Oh, that's right. Because with Martine on episode 2 is the Gutsy Grannies. Well, no, what did Ashley say? Did we ask her favorite
Mary
team?
and Peach, didn't she?
Did she?
I thought she said Mary and Peach.
Well, she liked them regardless. And then Davina said Gary and Dave, and they got eliminated next.
I know. And I think we have to talk about this actual elimination, though, because as Phil is saying the words, is it Gary that literally starts begging Phil to, like...
Yeah, this was obnoxious.
It was horrible.
I mean, it was an appropriate send-off for them. It's like, their shtick got old by episode 3. And they were still wringing it dry. He's begging Phil for one more chance. Meanwhile, Phil is just standing there. Just like so awkwardly.
Phil has no clue what to do, and he's just not emoting. He's just like... It's quite something. I will say I'll miss Gary and Dave's quotes. They give us some great quotes, but I'm not overly sad to see them go.
No, for like watching TV, I'm glad that I don't have to watch them anymore and deal with them, but like they were fun to talk about, I suppose.
They brought entertainment.
I will say
value.
that. They did bring something to the season, although they overstayed their welcome, and although it got old really quick. They did play a role. And Gary has a quote here talking about Dave. He says, "You're a warrior. I'm not ever going to speak to you again, though, but thanks." And then Gary keeps on going because, this is his last chance to have his moment on TV. He really has to make it count. He says, "The first thing I'll do is cry, and then after that I'll pick up my controller and my life will continue." And to just keep the ball going, he says, "The most important thing will be blaming. I'm going to try and figure out who to blame for this loss."
Dare I say one final time? Crickets for Gary.
Crickets for Gary.
I think if we get merch, that should be like one of our...
Crickets for Gary. Could you imagine?
Yeah, I'll get someone to design a shirt.
That's ridiculous.
I think you and I should We should get like mugs or caps or something that say crickets for Gary and just walk around with them as if it's like a popular reference.
As if everybody would know what we're talking about.
Because no one's going to ask. They're going to feel like they're stupid if they don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. But anyway, I clapped, I cheered, I was happy as a clam. Great ending to a good episode. We're down to our final four. Taryn, Will,
Yes.
Blake, and Paige, Oswald and Danny, and Chris and Alex.
I have to say, I'm not overly surprised by the final four, except for Danny and Oswald. They really took me by surprise. So I'm interested. It's kind of nice because when we got down to the final four, I should say final three last season, it was like, okay, exactly who I expected it to be. And this time I'm like,
Yeah, but we've been doing a good job of predicting, because I mean, I said Blake and Paige for winners, and you said either Blake and Paige or Taryn Will, and they've made it to the final four. And last
Look at
season,
that.
I said Team Guido, you said Rob and Brennan, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
So we're on a roll.
We are.
But next week, they're going to Phil's home country in New Zealand, and they're
Yes.
bungee jumping there.
Probably at the famous bungee jump that I don't remember the name of, but it's famous.
Oh,
And next week we also have a guest too, so interesting.
another guest.
Maybe our guest will be able to pick off who is also eliminated. We'll ask him who he thinks is going to win, and then he'll just
And then he'll pick them off, yeah?
wait.
They'll be done for.
The thing is too, we still have, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 non-elimination rounds to go. So
Oh my god, that's ridiculous.
I
Wait.
feel like
Because, yeah, he said there's 4, and we've had 2. Because we had, who was saved? It was,
the Gutsy
Mary and
Grannies were
Peach?
saved once, right?
no, they weren't. No, that was me saying that I wish they were saved. I said we should add one to save them. They just, like, narrowly avoided elimination a couple times.
Right. Mary and Peach.
It was Mary and Peach and Blake and Paige. Was that it?
You're right, yeah.
So, I don't know how we're going to have 2 non-eliminations with 4 teams
I feel
remaining.
like next leg is a non-elimination, but who knows?
Yeah, and then they're gonna have, unless they have 2 non-eliminations in a row, because unless the final 3, they just make it a 2-part finale.
That would be insane.
I don't know why they do that.
Anyway, follow us on Instagram, Amazing Race Rewind. Send us a DM. Send us an email, amazingracerewind@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And check us out on YouTube. If that's where you like to listen to your podcasts, save our videos, like them, all that good jazz.
Like them, yeah. Rate us, give us a good rating. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us 5 stars, etc. Leave a review if that's an option, and we'll see you next week. Episode 9, Leg 10.
Bye.
Bye.